Hello everyone, this is Lala, and today I'm going to be discussing alpha females or alpha women. So obviously I just did the male counterpart, and now I'm going to do the female counterpart. So I am basing the people who are on this video on either one or two of these categories or a combination of them both. If you are on this list, it's because you have an aggressive personality where you just bring a lot of attention amongst yourself, you cause a lot of conflict, and you kind of just naturally have a leader vibe. And on a strategic point of view, you are the leader of your alliance where you're seen as the figurehead. You're always directing the motions and the moves that you and your alliance need to make. Everyone knows your moves and you're very transparent on a strategic point of view. And some people are just a combination of the two. So that's kind of the variances regarding how people will be put on the list. I'm not even going to waste much time. Let's just get right to it. So we have to go to the OG of the OGs with Nicole from Big Brother 2. She got into trouble immediately on the season because of her loud, abrasive personality, where a lot of people kind of just rubbed the wrong way about it. So she was not only to go home, but she got to work. She made some key relationships and she was able to kind of turn the house dynamics around, where not only did she stay at the end of the first week where she was the target, but she found herself in a majority alliance. She's also someone who had huge OCD, so she would have freakouts whenever people were very dirty within the house and they wouldn't clean up on time. Her OCD also caused her to get into a lot of conflicts with people. The way she spoke to people didn't really improve much as the season went on, but she had so much power. And then people started getting more and more annoyed with her. Nicole had her freakouts, which we saw, especially with her dynamics with, well, she was also aligned closely with the other alpha male of the house in Hardy, where they were kind of portrayed as devils as the season went on, as they were dominating competitions, and they're causing so much conflict, especially with the increasing hypocrisy regarding the way they played the game and how they wanted to portray themselves. It caused for her to lose, but it didn't end up with her feeling like she could be herself, and it caused her to have a very negative experience in the Big Brother house overall. But she's the standard with how women can play the game and how people in general can play the game, since this was a new game during her season. Now we are moving on to Danielle from Big Brother 3 and Big Brother 7, who fills a similar enough role to Nicole, but I think her personality is a lot less extreme than Nicole's when it comes to being confrontational. Though, if you push Danielle, she will go there. But I also think Danielle is just a lot more self aware and a lot funnier. So it kind of caused her being an alpha personality in some ways to be toned down, since she's not really a confrontational person like that. But obviously, the main reason why she is on this list is due to her strategic acumen. So, in the first few weeks of the season, she was kind of on the out and she recognized that people were not approaching her at all. So, she needed to kind of win people over. She used her humor to do that. She also used the fact that she was a mother to her advantage. And she kept her mouth shut, eyes open, while she observed what was happening in the house and was able to um, get in between the cracks when it came to that majority alliance. And then when it came to time to really take the house under her control with the Eric boot and to save Felisa, she and her allies did that. And after that, Danielle just kind of ran through the season. She was never nominated throughout that season. And people recognized how dominant she was, but they didn't really feel like they could do anything about it. But due to that, and this still being a moralistic time in reality TV, she was still nominated. She lost that season by an almost unanimous vote. Danielle comes in Big Brother 7, where she is obviously everyone knows her game, so she has to be more under the radar, especially after she kind of screwed up in the first week. But then she found herself in the Legion of Doom alliance. She kind of had to kiss ass for the next several weeks. But we saw her in a decent enough position, though it wasn't as dominant as it was in the first season. And then, of course, we had a huge meltdown when Erica turned on her, and that's easily the most confrontational Danielle has gotten. Really, Danielle, pretty much I feel Nicole was the template for a woman of this archetype, but Danielle, that she kind of created or she built up from Nicole's templates to create herself as the standard of this archetype, especially from a strategic point of view. So there's quite a few women from Big Brother 4 that's going to be on the list, and the first one is Dana. So I honestly think out of the women on the season, she had the hugest personality. If you look at her diary room, she had like the highest average rate for the entire time she was in the house. So I think that says something. Dana was very dynamic. She also might have suffered from OCD and some other stuff. She was someone who did get into confrontations, or for the little that did happen in the house. She's going to tell you how she feels. She was never going to hold back. She's always going to speak her mind. And she was always trying to do something in the game. I do give her credit for that. But the thing is, she just wasn't good at the game or the strategic element of the game. So that was never going to work. I do think Dina is the first example of the alpha woman flame out. So the woman version of this archetype where they just flame out very quickly. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about her here. So the next person is pretty self-explanatory. And when it comes to the little drama that did take place on Big Brother 4, it surrounded Allison, essentially. So the thing with her is that she initially came in with a meeker personality, but it was clear from the very beginning that it was very false. She never really followed anyone. She was very self-interested, arguably the most self-interested woman to ever be on Big Brother. Of course, she ended up convincing Nathan to use the reader on her, and then she kind of discarded him. Though I do think the way that it happened, they made it seem like she used him the entire time, and I don't think that was the case. And then there was her feud with Dana that was entertaining for the few weeks that it existed. And just the way she maneuvered the house. Honestly, if a man played the way she played, it would be more accepted. But because she was a woman, and in general, she just didn't know how to work the jury and she appeared kind of fake, it didn't cause her to win. But her kind of messy gameplay worked for the dynamics of the Big Brother 4 house, but it didn't translate well to the Big Brother 7 All Stars house, where she claimed that she was going to change, but she quickly went back to her old ways and it caused her to be evicted first. I do give her props for playing in a more untraditional way for a woman, and no one really played that way as successfully as she did during Big Brother 4. But yeah, she's a given when it comes to being on this list. Another one who is pretty self explanatory on the list is Jin. She definitely had a more firecracker personality that she kind of used for humorous reasons at first, or at least that's how she wanted to portray it as, but it's clear that it was just her personality and she just didn't like a lot of the people there. She was also someone who was very self-interested, and she obviously was a floater as well, but she was more under the radar with it than Allison was, and she wasn't seen as being as loud. But yeah, June was never someone that could be convinced to do something. She was never a follower. People knew her personality and they didn't really like it, but they couldn't really do much about it. And also, like Allison, due to the dynamics of the season and them deciding to work together for the second half of the season, it caused them to do very well. And I think Jen, strategically, it makes sense for her to be here, but I think the major reason why she's here is due to her personality just being so out there compared to most other women. And she's never going to be one who is timid with her opinions or to get when it comes to getting what she wants. Now we are going to move on to the twins from Big Brother 5. And I initially didn't have them here, but when looking through their entire journey on the season, they definitely fit here. But it was hidden because for the first half of their journey, they were playing as one, but they were pretending to be one person because one person would be in the house while the other was sequestered, and they had to do that for the first 4 or so weeks before they could enter as two individual players. So it was hidden, but Adria, or what the house thought was Adria, was still always one of the bigger target of the other side. She was always seen as one of the leaders of the other group. But then when Natalie entered the house and they're both their own individual players, they both really just did whatever the F they wanted to do. They pretty much isolated themselves and then they went on a huge power trip. And then we learned that both Adria and Natalie have both they both have very hard, aggressive personalities that just rub everyone the wrong way. And when they're together, they just fed off each other's personality, which just made it even worse and worse and worse and worse. And the final person from Big Brother 5 that we have here is Diane, and she's definitely an alpha woman. From the very beginning of the game, she was always trying to make moves that would cause herself and her people to be in the front lines running things, whether it worked or not, whether it was sloppy. She was always trying something, and I do give her props for that. But it brought her a lot of attention by people who weren't in her alliance, and she was always one of the top targets. And they also knew that she was very insecure and easily rattled, so they picked fights with her and she would always respond back, hence all her fights with Scott and Jace throughout the beginning of the season. And then in the mid game, things actually did go into her favor, where everyone wanted to work with her. She got rid of her biggest ops and enemies. But as we all know, her relationship with Drew definitely started to blind her, and then she eventually became the villain of the season when she started making all these cutthroat moves and never really owning it in the season. On Big Brother 7, she was definitely a lot more muted and a lot more passive, and the alpha energy she had in Big Brother 5 wasn't really there on Big Brother 7, but she definitely fits this archetype overall. So, when it comes to the women on Big Brother 6, they're here for entirely different reasons. So, Janelle is here solely for her personality and not for her strategy at all. To be honest, she wasn't even on my initial list just because strategically she really doesn't have it there. But I think Janelle having 4 seasons under her belt and her presence had me putting her here. Obviously, in Big Brother 6, a lot of people were just bothered by her. She didn't really care to fit in or to kiss ass, and she got into some arguments here and there, and that continued in Big Brother 7, where she was the alpha woman on the season. Obviously, she was the only woman in the alliance, and because she was winning so much, she was the one who was making a lot of the decisions. She was booting out many of the other women, and people either wanted to target her or to weaponize her. So she was that B on the season, on Big Brother 7 at least. When it comes to Big Brother 14 and Big Brother 22, she was a lot older and a lot more mature, and she was on casts that didn't really know who she was. They just saw her as the older woman with a reputation that precedes her. And whatever strategic improvements that she made really didn't matter at that point, just due to her coming off as larger than life, especially amongst those two cats that didn't really watch her seasons whatsoever. So that's all that I kind of have to say about Janelle here. It's her personality that caused her to be here, not her strategy, where she's very unfiltered. She can't hold back her opinions. She says what she means, she says what she wants, and she does what she wants. And that's why she's here. So Yvette is also here mainly for her personality, but I will say that she was more strategically active than Janelle, or at least when it comes to how Yvette was in the friendship, though she obviously wasn't the leader or the main leader of the season. She was known as the See Latina throughout the season, and honestly, Yvette really helped push that narrative out there. She got into her fair share of confrontations and arguments with people in and outside of her alliance that built a target on her. She couldn't close her mouth to save her life, and because of just how she is or how she was, it brought a lot of attention to her. But she also had this weird sense of loyalty and a lack of self interest where she could have made certain moves that would have caused her to win, but she didn't make it, and it caused her to lose the season. And now we are moving on to Maggie, and she's on here for completely different reasons than the other two, where she's on here solely due to her strategy and not due to her personality whatsoever. So after Eric was booted in week 3, who was her partner in the mechanics of the game, Maggie also won the head of household in the following week, which kind of put her in the leader position of the Friendship Alliance. But even if she didn't win that HOH, she probably would have become the leader anyways, where she was the calm presence kind of guiding her crazier personality. Allies were a lot more fragmented and were a lot more willing to turn on one another when the time came. She was always mediating conflict between them, and she was running things with an iron fist, even with who wasn't her allies HOH. The thing with Maggie is that she didn't have like interactions with the other side at all. So she had a poor a social game with the Sovs, but a good social game with her alliance. And she was here due to her strategy and not due to her personality, because quite frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of personality there. So, moving on to the post classic era, and I initially wasn't going to add anyone because I didn't feel like any of the Big Brother 8 women fit this category, and if I was solely basing it on Danielle's Big Brother 8 performance, she wouldn't be on here, but I do feel like she became more of an alpha woman archetype with Big Brother 13, especially, and you even saw hints of it during Big Brother 22. And I think the reason for that is because she wasn't around her father in those other two seasons like she was on her first season where he just took over everything and she was under his shadow, especially strategically. Personality wise, the potential was always there, but she was dealing with the fact that her father was there, so her personality conflicts were more focused on that. On Big Brother 13, she was in a prime position due to being single with her father being pulled from the house, and she was safe for the first few weeks. But because she was so alpha and she was so impatient and she wanted to take the reins of the game, she started doing stuff. She started setting up her own alliances and her own power structure, but she did it too soon and it bit her in the butt. So she was put in a position where she had to win, 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 win. And that's what she did over the next few weeks with the help of Kalia. And obviously, when she lost, she got sent home. And on Big Brother 22, she was in the majority alliance and she was still playing for Cody's best interest, but she was also Danielle, so she was trying to undermine a lot of her allies, set up certain structures so she could benefit. She's trying to keep her allies in and take away other people's allies, and she was putting her hands in every single pot. And yeah, I just feel like Danielle definitely fits this. She was definitely more of her own grown up woman who knew what she wanted and went after what she wanted, and her presence just causes people to either really fear her or to be annoyed by her, since she had that aura where she just wanted to get shit done. I am going to lump in a few of the BB9 women together just to hit them out of the park and to get them over with. And the women that I have here are here mainly due to their personality being extremely aggressive. So Jen, she definitely fits this to a T. She rubbed people the wrong way from the very beginning due to her overbearing personality and her having a boyfriend in the house. And it didn't help that she was also empowered from the jump due to that power couple twist. And then when that came in and her fighting with Allison came out due to the boyfriend stuff, she was sent home. And it didn't help that she mentioned that Ryan was racist as a campaigning tool. And yeah, speaking about the other person in this conflict, we have Allison, and she was someone who always wanted to get into the game. She wanted to do anything she could to stay and to gain control. She even created a fake lesbian relationship with Sheila that they told to the house so she could use it to advantage, and then that ended up biting her in the butt. She threatened to reveal Ryan and Jen's relationship when she was partnered with Ryan, that caused things to pretty much spiral out of control. Then after that, she essentially organized a flip for Matt and Natalie to go home against Amanda and Alex, and then flip back last minute, which made her look even shady. She rubbed a lot of people the wrong way with a lot of her antics, and we saw her get into a huge fallout with Josh during her last week in the house. Yeah, she's definitely an A-type personality who tried and failed to get what she wanted, and she's an early beat flame out like Jen. Honestly, Chelsea is only on here due to her personality. Strategically, she really didn't take charge whatsoever. And she's here because she's easily one of the most aggressive women I have ever met. Some of the stuff that came out of her mouth was just beyond filthy. She had a really, 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 really bad party mouth, and she had such venom in her that was unlike so many of the other people on the season. Despite them having a lot of drama, there's just something very sinister about the way she fought with people. So yeah, I definitely think she has that alpha aggressive personality, despite her not implementing that in her gameplay. So we have a good amount of Big Brother 10 women on this list to go through. And you can definitely tell that they cast a bunch of type A alpha aggressive women within their late 20s and early 30s to have a very explosive season, and it worked. So I'm going to go through the eviction order in Libra, where pretty much she was the main figure in that Brian back this wasn't a backdoor, that Brian blindside happening because she realized that Ollie, Dan, and Brian were working together, and she put the pieces together with her ally. And due to this and her being so involved in a lot of what was happening, people kind of quickly caught on to Liba planting a lot of seeds throughout the house, and it caused a target on her back. And people like kind of pinning stuff on her as well. So she would have to defend herself, so which caused her to get into so many arguments in the house. And it got to the point where people were just blatantly lying on her and they wanted to pick at her, so she had to defend herself and be the angry black woman that people wanted to paint her out to be. And it eventually got too much, and all of her initial pot stirring got back to her. April was also along with the ride with Libra for those first few weeks, where April's always someone who was seen to have a very big personality, and she was also involved in a lot of what was going on, especially during those first few weeks. So despite Libra being the biggest target, April was always the second biggest target. When she won Audie flipped on his original alliance because she was also one of the people who caught on to it. She and Libra kind of busted it, and Audie had a relationship with her. And then when April was HOH, she was doing a lot of shysty stuff. She was kind of selling her allies under the bus so she could have a new group, and she was definitely undercutting them. But she was shocked where they ended up blindsiding her on her HOH. They blew up at one another, but it didn't help minimize her target, and she went home right after Libra. Honestly, Michelle was someone that I was debating putting on this list because when it comes to the strategy, she really wasn't the aggressive alpha woman when it comes to that. But when it comes to personality, oh hell yeah, she definitely belongs on this list. And it's clear that CBS cast her because she was a huge firecracker and they knew that she was going to pop off a lot throughout the season and have several meltdowns, and she definitely did. And despite all that, I do think that caused her aura caused her to be seen as more aggressive and alpha woman than compared to someone else, or a few people who were kind of similar to her, but they didn't have that alpha energy. And the last person is Keisha. Obviously, she lasted longer than all the other women, but she definitely had her hands in all of the pots as well during those first few weeks. She used her HOH to split her first HOH to split up that first eight group. And then the next week, she flipped the house again with booting Jesse, undercutting April. But then after that, she kind of just like stuck with Dan and Memphis and kind of let them take charge. But she definitely had that alpha personality within her as well, which the entire house knew about. And that's really all I have to say about the P10 woman. So we go from the last two seasons having quite a few people to most of the other seasons from the rest of this era only having one person, and for this season I only have Chima here. Looking at all the other women, they just didn't give alpha energy when it comes to their strategy or their personality, and I definitely do think Chima fit this on both. Obviously, she was aligned with Natalie and Jesse, but she wasn't a follower of either of the two. She was a co-leader, and everyone in the house definitely recognized her as that. She even kind of deviated to target Russell when that wasn't something that either one of them wanted. Chima was really the one who was pushing the girl power, the girls need to work together narrative. And you can tell that she was very serious about it. Obviously, her personality is another reason as to why she's here, because she has such a fiery and big personality where she's not afraid to say what she feels, she's not afraid to get confrontational, and there are times where she actually revels in it. But ultimately, all of this and her type A personality, especially with all the traumas that she has dealt with and the twists that were specific in this season, led to her downfall. So from Big Brother 12, I have Rachel. And she was also someone that I was heavily considering to not put on here because when it comes to strategy, she was just abhorrent all around, but she always did what she wanted to do, so I'll give her credit for that. And no, I am not considering BB27 Rachel on this list since one, it's still ongoing. Two, I haven't talked about BB27 in any of the other videos, so why am I going to do that for any of the current and future archetype videos with them going to be doing over the next few weeks? She's on here due to her personality, where right from the beginning of Big Brother 12, she had this aura that had people pressed and bothered no matter what she did. She was a fireball of conflict no matter where she went, whether she was arguing with Monet or Kristen or Matt, heck, even Brendan on her first season. She was the source of a lot of the drama, and it died down as soon as she left, and she couldn't be tamed, not even by Brendan. She comes in on Big Brother 13 in a privileged position since she's one of the six veterans. They obviously are aligned with one another and they have production on their side. Rachel would win the first few HOHs, and this would be the second time she won two HOHs back to back, which she did in 12 and 13 as well. So she was actually the driving force of a lot of the moves that happened on the season as well. But yet again, she was the source of a lot of the conflict within the house, whether she is fighting with Danielle and Clea, like she did through a lot of the season. She got into it with Cassie. Heck, she even fought with Jeff a lot of the time throughout the season as well. And I know there's many other people she got into conflict with. So it's mainly just her presence that and her aggressive personality that has her in this archetype rather than anything she specifically did. On a gameplay point of view, for Big Brother 13 and Big Brother 14, I have no one when it comes to the newbie woman who would fit this archetype. I was close to putting Clea on, but she didn't give that vibe, and I do think this is intentional because they generally always cast weak-minded newbies with mixed seasons, so they could be easier to influence, to work with, or to do things in favor of the veterans by the veterans or by production. So I'm not shocked that there's no one here from either of those seasons. And we're moving on to the last season of the era with Big Brother 15. And I think the two people that fit this archetype are obvious. A part of me thought of putting Jeannie Marie on here just because of her personality, but I definitely think that she was portrayed more as aloof and a goofball, though she was obviously horrid. And despite her being similar to someone like a Michelle, I felt like Michelle had more of a leader vibes, where Jeannie Marie was just a complete follower all the way around. And I genuinely just didn't want to talk about her. Anyways, the first woman here is Helen, and it obviously makes sense. She is a big personality, but not in the way that she's hugely confrontational, but it's the fact that she is so smart, she is so driven, she's going to fight to get what she wants, she's going to debate you to get what you want, and she's going to convince you to get what you want, and she's not subtle about it whatsoever. And she doesn't even really try to be. Obviously, it got Helen far as an Asian American woman and in her career in politics, I believe. And she used that in the Big Brother house. And people saw through it, but it benefited them for a while since they weren't in the majority for that first week or two. Then they flipped things, and then Helen was kind of in power. But she kind of underestimated how others saw her, so she started becoming out of the loop at one point in time, and she's obsessed with making big moves, big moves, big moves, big moves, and telling people that, though she herself didn't want to do it. And it got to the point where she eventually became the big move, and she got flipped on, and especially because she was undervaluing some of her closest allies because she wanted to align with a side of the house, and they saw through Helen, and they snipped her immediately like that. The second woman who definitely fits this category is Amanda, and she fits this from a personality and a gameplay point of view. Right from the beginning, she was advising the first HOH McCray on what he needs to do to make sure that he is a successful HOH. People realized the influence she had on him, and she had influence on a lot of people throughout the next few weeks, which wasn't really subtle. She and Helen had that in common where they were very how do I say this? Transparent with how they move, and Amanda moved like a ball in a china shop, but the intimidation factor that she definitely used towards her advantage worked for a lot of worked in her favor, and she also had people. who were defending her and also using her as a shield. This is despite her never winning an HOH and only winning one veto throughout the entire season. But once people had no use for her and she became too much, she was turned on as well. And she got into so many arguments throughout the season with most of the house. She dished it out, but she rarely could take it back, and this continued even up until her last day in, or her last night in the house. And we end the post-classic era with these two. Alrighty, so I did not have anyone on Big Brother 16 because they're arguably the weakest woman cast ever, and that was clearly intentional by CBS's part. I did think about putting Nicole on due to her strategy in the succeeding seasons that she did, i.e., BB18 and BB20. But when I really, sorry, BB18 and BB22, I don't know why I said 20. But when you really look at it, her strategy and her personality just mainly gave victimized meek Becky. That was kind of her thing, so I didn't feel like adding her. Anyways, onto the first person that I am adding here is Devon. And she's obviously here for her huge personality, but also her strategy, or should I say, lack thereof, regarding her 3 seasons. So the thing with Devon is that she always gets into a majority alliance or some sort of big grouping in all 3 of her seasons, and she should coast off of that, but she always she can never just relax and enjoy it. She always has to micromanage everything, and she always tries to play like a Danielle Reyes game, which always bites her in the butt, and she ends up going earlier than she wants to. When it comes to her personality, she's obviously someone who is very vocal. She is very opinionated. She's going to say what she wants. She is very alpha when it comes to just her presence. She definitely gets into her fair share of arguments throughout her 3 seasons. She's very funny. She's someone that just immediately stands out, and she's not someone who can be controlled. She's not someone who's just going to ride the wave. She's not someone who's going to follow someone, and she's not someone who's going to keep her mouth shut. So she's definitely the prime example of this, and she generally has some of the flame outs when it comes to her gameplay as well. We have a decent amount of spots going to Big Brother 17 here, and obviously I'm going to go with Audrey. So clearly, Audrey had a chip on her shoulder for a lot of reasons, especially with how CBS handled her being transgender and kind of forcing her to like announce it right away. This did put her in good standing with a lot of the house guests. They were very respectful about it. She was in that majority alliance within that first week, but she started overplaying immediately. She was planting seeds against everyone in the house, even against some of her allies, and it all kind of blew up in her face by the end of the first week. Despite that, she had people like Shelly and Vanessa, especially Shelly, who wanted to keep her around. Though some of that might have been for optic reasons, but it gave Audrey some time to potentially recover. But Audrey just couldn't help herself. She was still planting seeds amongst all the house guests. She was still stirring the pot, and Audrey did get into a fair share of drama still, to the point where all caught up with her, and she had that huge meltdown where she literally hid in her room for like 4 days. She didn't even attend the veto meeting, and she really came out during her last day. And yeah, Audrey's a clear case of the alpha female early boot flame out here. And now we're going to move on to the woman who took out both of them in Shelley. So I forgot to mention for the other two that the 3 of them were in an alliance that lasted for like 3 days as soon as they entered the house, but they all started distrusting one another, and then Shelley got closer to Clay. So she decided to essentially flip from the original alliance to boot Devon, and of course Shelley didn't really get any flack from that. And then after this, she aligned with the Sixth Sense, I believe they were called, where Shelley was really one of the women who was really strategically running that alliance. She had a lot of input. She also had a lot of hands in a lot of pots, even on that other side of the house that she was kind of chipping away at, but she had enough of a social game where she was able to kind of float by, and she Also, one HOH again, where she ended up taking out Audrey because things were just looking too bad and the trust was broken there. But due to this and her almost winning the HOH week 6, which means that she almost won 6 HOHs back to back to back, Shirley was a huge target and she was seen as that alpha woman to take out. But there's a difference in her when she was nominated and when she lost power. She was very meek, she was very emotional, and despite being spared with Clay essentially quitting, she was booted the next week due to Becky's fumble of an HH. But I definitely do think Shelly's here mainly for her strategy and how involved she was in the game rather than her image conscious and meeker personality. And the final person from the season I have on the list is obviously Vanessa. Just from her vibe and her presence, you knew that she was going to be someone who dominated. I think we all knew that she was going to be a huge game butt, and that's something that she definitely lived up to, especially since she rarely talked personal with the house guests, and she actually struggled socially. But when it came to the game and how she can weaponize other people's games to her advantage, she was very key on that. And this is after her not being in the majority alliance for the first week or two of the season. But once she got going, she was unstoppable, which we saw with Sixth Sense Alliance, then the Scamper Squad, and then her just beasting in the competitions. But all of that doesn't really discount for her personality, where Vanessa was a huge paranoid mess. I do feel like some of it she weaponized and she kind of used her emotions to kind of manipulate people to do what she wanted, though she claims that wasn't what she did, or she either wasn't aware of it. But she was also a huge drama magnet throughout the season. We saw her freak out on people like Jeff, on Audrey, on James, heck, even her allies several times throughout the season, as well as Steve. So she was someone who was a drama magnet. Her personality is one of the largest in the cast. She dominated in the game, and she's someone who was feared and respected just because of how aggressive and alpha she is. Vanessa is easily one of the most alpha women ever in Big Brother history from a personality and a competitive strategic point of view. And she definitely is very iconic in that way. So I was debating putting someone from Big Brother 18 on this list video category, and I still kind of am. I do have one person, and as you see, it is Tiffany, but I'm honestly still kind of iffy on her. So when you look at her personality, she definitely has a similar personality to her sister, maybe a bit more social, but just as paranoid and just as much of a drama magnet, which is why I put her here because she had that presence that just had people pressed and bothered. So I was like, okay, she makes sense. But when it comes to the strategy, it didn't really work out. And I think it's because she was cast the season after her sister completely dominated. And that was the last thing that they saw. So she really couldn't live up to it, and it kind of caged her in a way. But I do feel like she has the other ingredients to be here. So here she is, I guess. It's not shocking that Big Brother 18 has one who barely made it on this list because it's a mixed season and they generally have weaker newbies to counter the vets. But I think because she was Vanessa's sister, they kind of allowed a more alpha like newbie woman to be on the cast. Alrighty, so I do have two people from Big Brother 19 who fit this category, and it's solely based on their personalities and nothing to do with their gameplay. So the first person I have here is Jessica, and she's here because she was a huge drama magnet throughout the season. She picked fights with so many people throughout the season, though a lot of that was her defending herself as well. She wasn't a Paul follower, though uh, it's arguable that the only reason why she was a Paul follower was because he tossed her to the curb when she sided with her man. And Jessica really had a lot of the women bothered. She really wanted to do her own thing after a while, but she just wasn't good at the game, and she played the game way too personally. But I think her big personality is enough of a reason as to why she's on the list, despite her being a very, very bad game player. The other woman from Big Brother 19 that I did put on here is Christmas. And I think when they cast her, they thought she would be a more dominant game player and a lot more aggressive when it comes to the game. But despite not being that when it comes to the game, she definitely is an alpha woman when it comes to her personality, where she was extremely intense, and we saw this on both of her seasons. I think in Big Brother 19, once she was turned on by Cody, she obviously was put in a position where she had to defend herself. And then when she broke her ankle or her foot during the season, she got more and more angry because she was relying on her physicality and she couldn't do that for the entire season. So she pretty much got more angry, she got more aggressive, and then she started picking fights with a lot more people, though some of that was orchestrated due to Paul, and a lot of people were just commenting about how miserable of a person she was. And we did see some of this in Big Brother 22, where she was healed, and it seemed like she was trying to be a better person. She was trying to calm down her alpha, miserable, aggressive tendencies, but we all saw when her H came in, she reverted back to her old ways, and she really showed a nasty side of herself, which really turned off a lot of the house guests, and she never really recovered from that. The only woman representing Big Brother 20 on this list is Bailey, and I do think she represents the alpha woman personality, both in personality and when it came to how she played the game, unlike in Angela, where she wasn't that on either level. So, with Bailey, she became the cedar leader of the Hive Alliance once Swaggy was booted, despite her not even being in the original Falte Alliance. And I think it's just due to her very strong personality. She's very opinionated. People went to her for advice, and she's just someone who's just a natural leader, despite her not really having the temperament to do so, which we especially saw on her HOH week, where she treated her allies like crap. She did not listen to anyone. She was a huge no at all. And honestly, she did come off as very intense and kind of aggressive at times. And we saw this continued on in her downfall week, which was right after her poor HOH week. I will say that on Big Brother 22, she did tone it down a lot. She wasn't getting into many fights at all. She really took a step back when it came to how she played the game. She was kind of just like following people around and letting things happen. She still had the arrogant personality, but she wasn't like confrontational or trying to take over the game at all. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about her. Now we are getting into the final woman of the era and the only woman from Big Brother 21, and that is Christy. If there was someone who was similar to Vanessa on a gameplay and a personality and a background point of view, it is Christy. They're both LGBT women who were in relationships when they did the season. I think they're both now married to the same woman that they were with while on the season. They were both alpha women who completely took over the game, whether they were in dominating alliances or they were under or when they lost power. Essentially, they both got into so much drama throughout the season. They were definitely seen as that bitch when it comes to being the woman who were really running things and had the huge personality. Christy did not let the men run all over her, and she definitely stood her ground a lot, which is one of the reasons why her majority alliance ended up fumbling. And it was interesting that we had to see her be an alpha woman while on the top and at the bottom. So that was very interesting to watch. She definitely used her emotions to manipulate people throughout the season. And she was also very paranoid, which she definitely used to her advantage as well, though it went overboard at times. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about Christie and the women of the modern era who fit this archetype. Now we are moving on to the diversity era, and with Big Brother 23, there's really only one choice, and that is Tiffany. So, Tiffany did have a big personality, but just because this cast in general didn't have the biggest personalities and was a very non confrontational season, we didn't really see her in much drama, but she definitely had the presence where everyone respected her, everyone recognized her for the alpha woman that she was in the house. When it comes to the gameplay, she definitely dominated. She created the strategy that the cookout used to dominate the season. No, it's essentially what the brigade did back in Big Brother 12. She was the one who was enacting all of their strategies. She was the one who had the relationships with people outside of the cookout to kind of manipulate them to doing what the cookout needed. And she was really the mastermind of the season. And she was also the biggest personality of the season. So she definitely earned her spot here. And there's really nothing else to say. So we're gonna get this over and done with because these women were all booted early, and I don't really like them. So Paloma, she was definitely running things during the only week that she was there. She was working with a lot of the women, though they claimed they were girls, but all of their actions said otherwise. Well, obviously, she blew her lid and she ended up DQing. So, moving on, her ally Amira essentially took over that group afterward, especially with how she kind of manipulated Jasmine's HOH and how she still had a lot of connections to people in the house. But a lot of the guys were threatened, or her male allies, i.e., Monty and Kyle, were threatened by her and another person we're going to discuss in a minute, position in the house and how they were very strong in personality and how they were strong in how they viewed the game and how they wanted to execute the game. So, when that happened and the Fessy Besties twist happened and a bunch of other elements happened, they all decided to flip on her and to get her out in the third week. And the other person that I am discussing is Nicole, who was brought into that alliance in the second week. She and Amira got very, very, very close. They both had strong, intense personalities, and they saw the game in the same way. But when the leftovers were formed and they decided to target Amira, they decided to target Nicole next because she's the only other strong. Obviously, she's a strong woman in personality and kind of gameplay and contrition, I mean, but she was the only other strong ally who could hold that other side together. So she was sent right. She was booted right after Amir, and that's all I care to say about these three. Also, it is not a coincidence that the two women who were in the Leftovers Alliance were a lot more unique when it came to gameplay and personality compared to the three women I just discussed. So, moving on to Big Brother 25, and I have three women to talk about. And as you've seen through the list, you'll notice that some of the alpha women who were on the same season together worked together, and it either provided great results or messy results. And these three are no different. So, chronologically, Izzy pretty much decided to work with Suri from the very beginning. She decided to work for Suri, and she did help implement a lot of the plans that that side of the house did. She even had some relationships with people on the other side of the house that she definitely used to her benefit. I would say that her lack of self-interest caused me to almost not put her on here, but I did put her on here because she had such a huge, intense, and abrasive personality that really wasn't shown much on the episodes from the casual point of view. But yeah, that's why she is here, and she's kind of an example of the flame out. But she wasn't booted too early, so I don't know if that would apply. Obviously, Sari is a huge alpha woman. We know this from her Survivor career, where she was always running all of her alliances there, and she carried that on to Big Brother. Obviously, she had the benefit of being a reality TV veteran, and she had her son in the house with her that they weaponized, and most people didn't know about that relationship. And due to that, they were able to kind of cross information with one another. And Suri ran the first half of the season like she ran it with two iron fists, and she really had her lackeys, and everything was going well. But things started falling apart, and we saw a different side of Suri. We saw a sassier, a bit more of a confrontational version of Suri, and this was especially because she was stuck with Felicia for the second half of the season. And while they fit a similar archetype with them being older parents, their personalities were kind of like oil and water a lot of the time, and she was kind of just over the experience. And she had a bigger personality on Big Brother than she did on Survivor, where she was a lot calmer on Survivor in comparison. But I think that's just due to her not liking their Big Brother environment. So with Felicia, she did play the game, I will give her that, and she did try to make a lot of moves, and a lot of her moves were self-interesting, so I do give her props for that. But she really wasn't good at the game. She was kind of like the third or fourth wheel within the alliance. But she's here because she had a huge ass personality. She was funny as heck. She was very opinionated. She let you know what she thought, whether it was good or bad. She got into several arguments and confrontations with people in and outside of her alliance. She didn't give a fuck. And yeah, definitely huge alpha personality. And it makes sense with her history with being in the military. And the other additional information that she let us know regarding her background. Now we are moving on to the final season on this list. And we have Brooklyn, Chelsea, and Angela. I'm going to go over them chronologically. Brooklyn was definitely cast to be the alpha woman archetype. She came in, she was helping Chelsea run that side of the house. With that, had a lot of power. Throughout the first few weeks, she had a lot of good relationships with people, though she ended up kind of abandoning some of those relationships, which would bite her in the butt. But she's the prime example of a flameout, as where when things flipped on her and didn't go her way, she couldn't really recover despite her best efforts, and we saw a lot more of the personality element of her alpha personality coming back with her getting a bit more confrontational. Her not her very expressive facial features when it comes to her being very annoyed or pissed off, and she kind of embraced her villainy a little bit there. So, Angela, she's pretty much very similar to Felicia when it comes to them being older women with huge personalities and who were playing the game. The main difference is that Angela didn't really have any alliances, especially after how she completely blew it in the first week and how her actions with Matt turned people off and her just being so blabbermouthy. After that, Angela was nominated so many times, and she was just consistently planting seeds with people to kind of stir stuff up. She was always trying to make a move. I'm pretty sure she argued with almost damn near the entire house. I can't even name the list of all the people she argued with, but it showed that Angela has a huge personality and she wasn't going to dim herself down for these youngins, and you really have to appreciate that. The final person is Chelsea. Think she's not the only winner who I think she might be the last alpha woman who won since Rachel, but Chelsea had like the mastermind gameplay where obviously Chelsea had her relationships with people, where she used that to kind of not carry her, she used that to propel her to the game. She would lie a lot despite her being very religious. She would make the cutthroat moves that she needed to make, but she also won a decent amount of competitions as well to save her. She definitely had a personality, but she wasn't like the confrontational type, but you definitely felt her huge personality and her presence that a lot of the alpha women have, so I just had to include her here. And she's easily the best case scenario for an alpha woman on a gameplay point of view. So not only does that conclude the alpha woman video, it concludes the alpha male and women archetype overall. And it's interesting that I did these two videos so quickly, where some of the others it took me weeks to do. And I think it's because I think this archetype, whether they are a man or a woman, is just a lot more interesting. So I was more invested just get it over and done with. There's always going to be, no, not always. For the most part, there should be at least one woman per season who fits this. And if there isn't one, at least one woman, chances are they want a male dominating season, which we saw with the likes of a Big Brother 16. And if there's several alpha women, chances are you'll have a more interesting season. So I find that to be very interesting to look at. So anyways, just from the list that I'm looking at now, we have 5 more videos where I'm going to do the New York / New Jersey native archetype next. Then the model / heartthrob / slut / pageant archetype. I don't know if I'm going to split that up into men and women, like I split this alpha archetype into men and women videos. So that could be one video, that could be 2 videos. Then there's going to be the religious god worshiper archetype, and then there's the gimmick / plant / gamer archetype. And I'm pretty sure that's all going to be just one video because I don't care to split it up. So give or take 4 to 5 more videos of these archetypes to go over next. Thank you all for following, and I'll be back with more content soon. Bye!